Hello and welcome to Michigan Theater and Film Talk. My name is Jeff and I'm from Michigan Michael Chekhov classes. And this is part 4 of our What is Michigan series, and it will probably be part 100 billion if I had my way with it. But I don't know that there's 100 billion people in Michigan.
No. I think you're exaggerating, but yeah, but the acting community is I know that it's smaller.
Yeah, it's
a nice small acting.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's great about it.
But
this little business things first. We are available now on Apple Podcasts and searchable on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. I'm going to start posting this on Facebook as well. So if you're watching this on Facebook, you can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can always go to Michigan Chekhov on Facebook and like my page, and you'll be the first to get notifications of these types of new videos. My guest today is Barton Bund.
Hi there.
My dear friend, who I've known for many years.
Yeah, it's been over 10 years. I just realized.
Yeah. In fact, I think the first time we met was on a film shoot in which I was doing. I think it was Comcast or something, and I was like, can't believe it.
Oh my God! Yeah. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
All about that.
Yeah, I specialize in very silly roles, and you specialize in mature director type roles.
They put me into that. Yeah. Well, it's a beard, and it's things like. But they hired a lot of people on that spot.
Yeah, they did. That was a huge shoot,
and that was one of the first commercials I'd ever done. It was like one of the first.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was like the second thing I ever did, because I joined the talent shop over here.
Yeah.
And then there was a big long period of time where I'm like, they're never calling me, and then that thing came up, and they hired so many people on that. I thought, and I bet if you looked back at that, you would be able to. That's like an all-star cast now. There are all these there
were some great people.
There were some amazing actors on that.
Yeah.
And so many. And so that was just one of those examples. So that was one of my introductions to the commercial world was so different. That was a big production, I recall. I mean, there was a lot of cameras, and it was kind of a
it was like this big. I think they rented a school in Pontiac.
Yeah,
I want to say, and we all were sort of waiting in this huge the dining room area or something like that.
And we're holding these auditions. Yeah, and so, but also the way of working that we had that day, I thought was unique, and I fell in love with the spontaneity, of being on camera very easily that day, because Amy, our director, she put me through a gauntlet at one point where she's just like, okay, now when it was just my coverage, and she wanted my reactions to all of you, and she had me crying, having like a fit, having like all these things that never made it into the. I mean, the only reaction that I had that they kept was just me being like, just some of these disappointment. All these talented actors doing silly...
Yeah, being as terrible as they possibly could.
Yeah, just being as bad, and just being... or just kind of like taking a certain talent that they might have and doing it badly, is what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Like, what a funny thing that is when actors act like untalented. When talented people like go out of their way.
It's not always easy to pull off.
No, it's well, and you want to do it kind of like in a... Okay, let's say like Florence Foster Jenkins or something like that. There are some of these or Ed Wood or something like that, and it's this extraordinary, hardworking, talentless, famous person, famous for being talentless, and that has never. I know that people listen to those things as jokes, and they watch Ed Wood, and I'm always like, no, I think that is just a beautiful artist.
He's following his own creative individuality, his own creative vision, and
nobody can make an Ed Wood movie better than he can.
Sure, so we know what it is.
Yeah, and so I don't share this I had the same feeling when I was watching I've never seen The Room. The Tommy Wiseau. I've seen the Disaster Artist, James Franco's version, and I was just blown away by it. And I will not go to see something. I will not hate watch anything. I will not go and see something just to make fun of it. I'm so I just feel that's such a disrespect. It's such a horrid, thing to go and look at this person's life's work. What a, and just shit all over it. I mean, it just feels so. What do you get out of that? I've never enjoyed that experience.
It's interesting you say that. It makes me think of Coen Brothers movies in a way because I really enjoy Coen Brothers movies by and large, but there are times where I feel like they veer into let's make fun of the person instead of show off or highlight eccentric characters, and that you're right. That is kind of a turn off.
But I think that's going to be very true of their kind of like and with a lot of comedy, and I think comedy is in a very interesting place right now.
Oh yeah, well,
because I don't think you would ever have like okay, so I just the Coen brothers have a style and technique that is very very unique, and I think that they are trying comedic. They are trying to stretch that comedic string as far as they can, and it does break at times.
Sure, I mean not everything is going to land. The Marx Brothers would tour around back in the day.
I always feel like with their films, I'm always like, okay, how is this landing with me? Because I know that this is good and this is well made and this is well executed.
Coen Brothers.
Yeah. In every conceivable way, this movie could be even perfect. But I can remember even seeing some of the. I do feel like they're brilliant. I do love a unique filmmaker or filmmaking team like that does this thing that isn't always going to feel good to me or isn't always going to like hit the spot. Like I would see, I know it's not cool to like Woody Allen, but I do think his films are absolutely the most beautifully made things, and they're gorgeous to watch. I mean, they're just sumptuous, and of course he made about 50 of them, so it's a mixed bag of there's some that are like odd experiments. Then there are his dramas, his serious dramas. Then there's his genre pieces. I mean, he's done enough. He made a film every year, and then there's his great films, which you could name a ton of them, which rank among some of the best ever. So,
sure.
But he's one of those artists that puts us all in an uncomfortable position because we aren't okay with, we know so much about them, or we feel like we know, and it's only a problem when art gets personal like this. And I'm sure you have questions. I don't know how I got on
it's great.
Woody Allen question, but I've always had like this. I've always there have been a lot of problematic artists whom like at first I fell in love with their stuff. I fell in love with their work, and I'm like, God, that's James Brown, what funkiest man who ever lived. Greatest performer and innovator and all these things. And then you learn like, oh my God, he's a disaster. This whole idea of can you separate the artist from their art and all that stuff? And I just feel like there are. I feel like there are times you have to. I feel like there are times you can't. And it's just one of those wrestling matches you have with your own self, especially when you really, really love it. When you really love and you really want to enjoy art. If you really want to enjoy, art, and but you only want it from nice people. I do think. I also wonder about that aspect of just like not a controversial person, but like a really, really unpleasant asshole of a person to deal with. A great artist who is just like. And there are other examples of that. So I was like, I'm looking at the films of Ingmar Bergman now, and he's an artist that I just worship. And then I'm like, I cracked open his autobiography, and I had a hard time with it because I'm like, wow, there really is more. Even though those films are really, really, you get plenty. That's a pretty satisfying experience. That's like getting kicked. Like a few times. Like you see Cries and Whispers or something, and it's just you don't need to see anything. You could take a break. From watching ever anything again, like all art after you see something like that.
Yeah.
And then I learn from reading, because I'm reading like film books and film theory these days, which has like been my focus lately, just so I can, learn how those brilliant, when I see somebody whose work I admire, I want to learn the process, because I don't want to steal anything or anything like that. It's not like that. When, filmmakers, I do think, steal a lot of shots. I mean, we do that all the time. We're just like, we're going to do it's a long hallway, so it's gonna bring to mind The Shining, or it's gonna, or something like that.
Have you watched Mr. Robot?
Yeah, a little. Do they?
Sam Esmail basically admits I steal everything, and he's stolen. I mean, you can see the influences. There's a Shining shot. There's this shot. There's that shot. Well, and it's just wonderful because it's not only a fantastic show in my view, but it's also sort of a master's class in film because he just shows us all these little different. Wow. He shoots in different ways.
I would appreciate. I can appreciate an homage all the time, or a something that slides into some. If it slides into some genre, some comfortable genre stuff, that's fine. But I guess. Well, when it comes to but okay, so back to like the personality of the artist and those
Yeah,
things.
sure.
I found with like Bergman was one of those. I mean, he got married a bunch of times. He was not a good like father to his kids. He just didn't even see them. And you know, like he fell in love with every single woman that he ever worked with, and you know, so Liv Ullmann and B.B. Anderson, and just he had his muse, and he would just fascinate over her, and of course, it led to the creation of. I mean, he's a guy whose track record is pretty much. I mean, it's like how many films and plays over the course of 60 years. I mean, this is my artistic hero, or this is one of these people I fascinate over, especially because there was always so much more off the page than on, and that was remarkable. You know, to learn that the thing that had created that little crazy gesture. That you just witnessed on an actor. And I do want to get into some film acting versus theater acting stuff, if you want to talk about that.
Absolutely. If you let's talk about.
We can redirect, because I don't know if you're a Bergman fan or not. It's really hard to describe Bergman to.
I love.
Are you a Bergman fan?
I like Bergman. I haven't watched all. I don't think I'm in your league.
Freak.
Yeah.
Freak of the week. Yeah, like I've even seen Summer with Monica. So
you are a Bergman super fan.
I'm going after completism.
You know that if you would like to talk about Bergman, that's great. But you know, I'm really interested.
I have my own podcast where I think I usually try to bring up Bergman with every guest.
What's the name of your podcast?
No, right now we're doing In Frame. In Frame is on Michigan Production Alliance's website, so that's mpami.org. And
okay.
We have one coming up. This is cool. This is geek. This is geeky stuff. But Douglas Trumbull, who did the effects for 2001: A Space Odyssey, Close Encounters, and Blade Runner, and The Tree of Life, I get to interview him.
That's amazing.
In a week and a half or so. Yeah, on the 9th. And he's showing all of his films in one day. So I've been geeking out. You know those...
Yeah.
You know these images that I'm talking about, and these iconic films. I mean, there's just a lot to talk about with a guy like that, and the technology and technique and things like that. So, so that's the podcast. It's mainly over... It's specifically on, like... Michigan Production Alliance is kind of this great networking nexus kind of thing for getting people crew jobs and advertising, projects and things. So it's pretty cool.
I'm actually really glad that you're on today because, I recently had this sort of online conversation where someone was saying, well, I guess, Michigan, what can you really learn? Are there really professionals in Michigan? And I was like, well, what are you talking about?
Well, where's this person coming from?
Well, he lived in Las Vegas, I think, and but he's primarily an L.A. Actor, teacher, director.
Okay, so he's maybe not.
But I don't know him. I mean,
aware of what's happening outside of his immediate area, which I think is
well. I mean, and I guess my goal is to highlight what's happening here, right?
Yeah. Well, so people have to look at it carefully because right now what we had a few years ago was the film incentive program, which allowed these great
international
out of town productions. They did not support. Not a lot of local films got the incentive support, but there's a couple of reasons why. Because of it has to do with budgets and things like that. But the credits and things like that. There's a way of rethinking it so that we can bring it back. But here's the thing. One of the best things we ever had was this AMC series called Low Winter Sun, and when it was, I got finally, I'd auditioned a bunch of times to finally had a day on it, and got to meet with Janet Pound afterwards, who had done all the casting. She and Kathy Mooney, and boy, they'd put on between them and some of the other casting companies in the area, they'd put on like 75 or more, 115 or more local performers in featured roles with dialogue and everything like that. Which is think of that.
That's amazing.
That's fantastic. Look at all those people. Think of all the talent in this area that you could now see on. So the first scene had David Riegel in it, and then then you would see Marty Smith turn up as a pimp, and then you would see one of my good friends, Joe Catherine, who I was working with at the very same time on a show, in a play. He had a regular recurring role. He was in every episode. Henri Franklin, all these local actors who were just so they're criminally underutilized in our current market. So film is there. That's where I see things kind of like the jobs are. You have to be pretty creative. See, there's your talent, there's your raw talent, and there's your creative desire, and all those things. There's the things that you do to the really pure artist self. Like the things you live to do in this world, and then there's the things you do to live, which are probably and the way that you sort of balance that is a creative act in itself. Sure. And that's where your unique journey as an actor really is told, is in that space in between. Because on this one side, you're going to have like this, like the greatest experience of your life, or you have the kind of gigs that you're really, like you've always wanted, like, and for I think for theater actors around here, that would be working at a Meadowbrook or a Purple Rose or a high tier equity house. Like that. And we do have wonderful talent in the area, and there are certain projects that have really highlighted that. So there were certain films that really did want to cast a lot of locals, and then there were some that just had spots for people here and there. What I want to see is a few more of the what I love to see are the young companies coming up, and I do believe that Michigan probably has more theater companies than maybe it's ever had ever. It's possible, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of theater companies starting, which is fantastic. There's a lot of people complaining that I'm talking to who are like, well, they're not union.
No,
they're not equity houses, so therefore, and they especially have a problem with that with regards to awards, because they're like, why are you giving this non-equity house an award? Or considering them at the same level as an equity house.
Well, I think that there's problems on both sides of that, because if it's not, what are we talking about? We're talking about a radically different approach to life between being in the union and not. So
really, what do you mean by that?
Because it's so personal, and it's so and so a decision to join any actors union is a very, very personal thing, and you may have your reasons for joining or not. But I would only join equity if I really thought I was installed as like a resident artist type person in a theater. Like that would be the right reason to do it. Well, and also because it's just that. It's just to get the work, to get the amount of work that you want to be getting. So I do think that it's a very, very personal thing that I'm not going to tell anybody to do it until they're absolutely ready. That's what I would say. And so around here, what I would say is like, keep doing those. And it's not okay for an equity person to look down on somebody and they're artistic, because they might be doing something, it might be the most phenomenal thing in the world.
Well, it's hard to.
We're talking about art.
When we're talking about equity theaters here, we're talking about 5 theaters, more or less.
There are not enough spots for everyone.
There's just not enough spots for. I mean, and for a while there, particularly in the 80s, for about 30 years, really, 80s, 90s, and the aughts, they were giving away equity cards like they're going out of style. So a lot of actors would get their equity card and then have to move in order to continue to work.
And man, that's again, that would be one person's personal journey, and that is included, I think, in a lot of people's plans. And I think that's especially true of people getting out of college and entering the workforce. But it's a thing that you build up. Fortunately, equity most of the time gives you the chance to build it up kind of steadily, and during that time, you get to figure a lot of things out.
Well, you can have the points that you need for up to 5 years before joining.
Yeah,
I mean, you can't work anywhere.
No,
but you can at least have them.
Yeah, and so now with SAG, it was a little while before I joined, because I wanted to continue. Well, I needed the money, and there was not enough SAG work. Fortunately, when I did decide to take the plunge and jump in, it took a little while, and I was really concerned that I'd done the right thing in terms of my, if I wanted to work outside of here in Chicago or Pittsburgh, yes, I'd done the right thing. But I was worried that I'd cut myself off from my opportunities that I had here, which were hand modeling and my sort of cornerstone things.
Yeah. So once you became a SAG, you stopped working in hand modeling.
Well, no, there were a couple of contracts that I still had going from before because I'd had sort of steady things going on. But yeah, those jobs are few and far between. And
non-union hands only.
Well, that's the way they were getting a really good deal at the time. And really, why would you pay? Honestly, like I was looking at it like, when they're cutting corners. Honestly, this is. I mean, so these are big, automakers. They have the money to throw around, and they should be using. See, here's what I'm finding on the other side. So, like, no, I don't think an equity theater can look down on another smaller artsy one because there are things that small company can do that the expensive theater can't, and artistically, there just are, in my opinion, unless you built an audience based on you as a risk-taking theater, which some do, and I think that's the way I would. When I had a company, that's what I always wanted to do, because I didn't want to. No matter if we were suddenly paying higher rent on a space, I still wanted our audience to be trained on the kind of theater that we believe in. So that was what was unique about the Blackbird. I think is just our choices. Although after a while, I do think that we're the shows we were doing at our theater would be. It's a season that would fit totally fine elsewhere. It's just that our aesthetic and our experience and all those things and our choices were, pretty specific. But we were always trying to figure out a way to pay people, and that does mean we would have a guest contract, which can be just very, very expensive to bring in an equity person. And I always like to do it when you can. Of course you can. It's just that. It's expensive. It's complicated, and it is a little bit easier. And here's what I'm trying to tell people more and more now, is that like you should, because I'm just starting a company myself, a film company, but I'm really committed to. We're hiring SAG performers. We just are.
Yeah.
And even on Mine Than Yours, this which we could have done in a kind of a student film way if that was what it was going to be, but we decided no, let's actually hire Erica Hovland and let's put her in there. And she's this.
Erica Hovland is a really talented local actress.
She is so phenomenal in this, and I am just like so happy with that. When I go back and I look at it, I'm just like, yeah, when you pay for a person, you're paying just a little more in terms of what you owe to the SAG as a union has made it very, very easy for small independent productions to hire. Professionals, and that's a beautiful thing. People have got to investigate it because too often I'm seeing audition notices come up and they're like, this is an unpaid thing, or we'll pay for this, or we'll feed you, or we'll do that. And it's like, you know what? If I were them and I wanted to make my short film or my music video or my experiment, which is what I think a lot of those folks are doing. They're for the first time, they're sort of like, okay, we're really going to do it. I've always wanted to, and now I'm going to do it. But they shouldn't be putting it out there so publicly like that. Because their productions get ruined before they even start.
That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah,
because
you're looking at it going, oh God, these guys.
Suddenly there's and there are even these haters that are so strong, and they even created. I had a run-in with these guys who were in the Atlanta market, and they like threaten you physically if you are not paying people on your production. They're just like, this looks like an unpaid situation. Sounds like you're just giving them lunch, or you're just giving them a stipend, or even when some of these people were paying, but they weren't paying enough. These people are like, if you want to deal with it, let's get face to face, and I'm like, Jesus, man, you just threatened him physically, actually.
Why would you?
And I spoke up, and I'm just like, okay, why'd you do that? And he's like, these people have to learn sometime. And I said,
with my fists.
Yeah, is this really about learning? Because I would have directed them over to the SAG to the SAG website or something like that. Is this really about learning, or what is this? And so these guys are dealing with the question in a very thuggish and wrong way. Because even if the guy, the original thing, because I followed this story and it just drove me nuts. But it opened my eyes, and it just said like, okay, I saw how this poor man who went into this very, very naively. Not realizing that he, if you say, okay, this is just an unpaid situation and things like that, you look like a real amateur, and you also look like a con by now because most people have been ripped off. And there are the problem with that we're dealing with an independent film market is that it's kind of Wild West, and I don't think there's enough oversight into things like safety. And I don't think there's enough oversight into things like, union standard practices. And so my whole thing is like, well, people just need to learn, and the only way that you learn is to be on a professional set. How do you get to a professional set? Well, you have to have had some experience. It's just really complicated. But what people need to do, the best thing I ever did was I did some short film experiments, and it was totally like understood that everybody. I'm just like, look, come over, guys. We're just going to do this. You'll have it as real footage or whatever. You're going to be great in it. I just want to play around.
But you probably called them personally.
Yeah, it wasn't like
it was your friends.
Yeah,
that's very different than like posting on Facebook, hello strangers, who are desperate enough to want to be on film.
Right, and so I'm worried that people are going to get taken advantage of, and there's so many ways that you can get taken advantage of in this business. Let's not create more, and let's give people an opportunity to learn. So, like, basically, what it boils down to is, like, if you are making this film or you're making this play, and yet you can't afford to pay your artists, you're not ready to, like, go wide with it. You do need to spend some time developing something, and but give yourself a kind of build that into your planning stages. If you're an aspiring filmmaker, you should know where what the next level and what's required into getting into that next tier. And unfortunately, here's the thing: I don't feel like union is if you're a union performer, you instantly are of, it's not a quality or a talent thing. But if you have said, oh, we're not hiring any local union people, then you've kind of cut yourself off from an incredible opportunity. Because I'd want to hire the most, and I'd pay the little extra if it is indeed extra to get Erica Hovland. But there was a very, very reasonable contract that we found. And, and even I appear in the film, and I asked our SAG rep, I'm just like, I'm the producer on this. And they're like, no, you still have to pay yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so I think we've got this gulf between, there's this kind of budget gap between these companies. And I do think that all the way along, when I was in a theater in a theater leadership position, I was always like, well, we're headed there, we're getting there, we're gonna have it. But it got more and more expensive as we went. Producing just became more and more and more expensive, and it was and so I was like up against my limitations. And
what were the expenses that you were encountering as a producer?
Okay, so the biggest I think so if you're starting out. I think that one of the things that can really bog you down, and what you don't necessarily have to do, is have a dedicated space. You can be cloud-based as a theater. You could be, and so that's what I would do right now. Is and now
maybe start their own YouTube channel.
Yeah, hey, you should be doing the kind of outreach and exploration and development that and because these things need to develop, you also need to get to that first production. So you need to figure it out. Now, when I started my company, I thought it was just a one and done thing. I didn't know that it was going to go on, but it was fun, so we did. But we had the Riverside Art Center in those days in Ypsilanti, and that was where my first play that I'd written. That's where I did it. You could rent it out for $500 a week. And then you'd pay a little deposit, and then you were, and I think you had to get your own insurance, and there was all kinds of things like that. But there were the expenses the biggest expenses you're going to have to do with your facility and your overheads in general over
so
time.
Your rents kept getting higher and higher.
Yeah, and we had to
your
make
bills.
Yeah, but also like you have to keep up with you have to make some improvements along the way too, and you have to beef up your if you're not giving people a nice looking set, you can't do it on a bare stage all the time either. You have to give people, you have to think about what the viewer kind of wants. You don't have to be expensive with there's always
there's ways, and you can,
there's creativity.
You can build a set for $1,500.
Yeah,
that looks really nice. and but you have to budget for that, and you have to accept that. That's pretty much. I mean, you could build a set for $800, really.
Well,
you could build a set for $500 that's passable. You could go, and if you're not really into flats, you could even build it for even less. But there are ways to go about designing a show. What frustrates me often is, for me, whenever I walk into a theater, I always look up, and I always look for the lights, and I'm like, okay, so I know how this show is going to be lit based on the number of lights that I see above me, and oftentimes, more often than not, I don't see enough lights, and I feel like lights are a big investment up front that pays dividends.
Well, and especially now, and I have, I mean, those high, there are quality lighting instruments that are affordable, and there are systems that are affordable that were not in this. I mean, they are cheap. They are so. My mind is blown at the quality. I mean, but the same, the same things are happening. I mean, just these LED lights that you see in
these things used to go for about $2,000.
They were insane, and they were primitive too compared to what we have now. Because now they're so malleable and controllable. They can track. They can remotely move. And you can build in so many more cues, and so you can get a lot more. So I do think that people need to look at where they're investing, and that is one area. But of course, it's you need to borrow a lot at first and things like that. And so I was, and I always did. I always loaned out my gear. I don't do it anymore, but because it's just the wear and tear. But yeah, so I would put the money there, and I would do make sure that everybody's getting paid, even if it's just. And one of the ways I used to do it, is just you just split the gate with people. Just the actors come in and they knew this was and even when I had, I mean, there are times where I had an equity performer in the show, but everybody else understood it was just this split thing. And so, but that's not good for a company when you have to split your entire gate just so that you can pay the actors gas money. I mean, like, it's just a crappy business model. Well, theater is a very, very unsustainable model. It's very hard unless you have a real donor base.
What I found interesting,
I hated it,
and what you were saying earlier about the step-by-step process in building a film. I couldn't help but think, well, why don't more theater owners think of that, or theater producers think in those terms as well? That this is a step-by-step process, and I'm going to go here, and maybe they are. There certainly is a lot more because you're building a season rather than a show, or trying to build a season rather than building a show. There's less money to go around. Because you're right. You can film outdoors. You don't have to necessarily.
Yeah, you don't have to build a set. Although I think that it's always to your advantage to if you can. You want to find the most remote space that you can. I mean, searching for studio space is a challenge for film, but especially for theater. Ann Arbor. For God's sake,
tell me about it.
Oh my God, the Ann Arbor has like no affordable space right now. It's a drag. It is just like so. It's so prohibitively expensive, so that if a new company came along, they would be in a real rut. It's really hard.
Yeah, you think, well, why don't we follow the Chicago model of the stage front or the storefront?
Yeah,
the storefront
should.
But the problem is there's not enough. In my experience, there's not a lot of real estate agents willing to work with you in that regard. Hey, I just want to rent for 6 weeks.
What you got to find is, you don't work. You got to set up a.
And if you guys know of any real estate agents who's willing to work that way, let me know, because I would love to hear about it.
What I always found instead was I didn't work with. I never worked with an agent. I consulted with an agent a couple of times when we were looking for space. But what we had to find were old school. Business owners who were independent, who had space of some kind, but they would either rent it out to us. But it became, you can do a lot more creative deals. In fact, the search for space was an extraordinarily frustrating, but ultimately interesting creative experience. And what it opened me up to was like, and I do believe in the storefronts, even though it's very hard to attract an audience out to a little space. I mean, that they just want, and the truth is, you can get more people when you, if you have a little space and you only charge $1 to come see it, or a canned good can get you in the door or something. Just like
to feed our poor actors.
Yeah. Like
not to donate.
A can of soup, like will get you in the door. That's great, but the truth is, when we would, as we got more expensive, and as we started charging more for tickets, more people were coming. They suddenly felt there was like more cachet to it, and it was just like
value.
But I don't like that. I want it to be super accessible because I wanted. You know why I set those prices so low is that I didn't want to put a barrier between anybody and this experience. Except and I was a little out of touch though. I think after a while, I was sort of like we would have a great success with something like Equus, and we would the successes that we were having were more. They were conventional. The successes were the comedies, the classics, the musicals, like anywhere else. And so if by chance something else comes along, a new play is you're doing a new play, it's challenging because nobody knows it, it's untested, and unless it's really really good, you don't have any buzz around it. In the way that whereas in film you don't rely on classic literature at all. I mean, you have IP and you have like classic source material and things like that in a way, but you don't have there's no we were looking at it and we're just like, who can we hire next season that's got more of a name as a director, an actor? And I said, there's nobody around here who has enough of a name that I think it would be the draw. The draw is your writer. The draw is Oscar Wilde. The draw is Neil Simon, or William Shakespeare. And I love that theater still has its heart in that place. And I think when theater drifts away from that sort of like literary mission or something, then they wind up taking making experiments. And I think that the theater needs to survive. And it will only survive with new material. I do believe that. Or, theater exists in time, and so I think that a theater piece can be very, very timely, and and it's the one at the moment that you need to be seeing because it's critical of the times that you're in. That's what's exciting to me is that it's something new, and film has to be something new. And so I think we were talking earlier about interpretation of classics. And which is a really fun artistic experience. I think that directing a play of Shakespeare is one of the most creatively challenging things you'll ever do in your life.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to take, you mentioned design, and you have to take so much care with the intricate design details. And even if you're going to play it in a blank, say you're just going to play it in the outdoors and there's no stage and there's no nothing, you still have to think about how you are going to get keep these people's attention by either the new thing that you are doing, the new thing that you are wearing, the new thing that you are, so if this play isn't still alive in you, and an actor needs to kind of go in I really, really want to see what that individual does with that role. I don't necessarily want you to do what anybody else did before. And the last time I worked, people were like, well, when we did The Tempest, we were doing this kind of thing and that kind of thing. And I'm like, that's exactly why I'm not going to do that.
because it's my vision has got to be my vision. And I feel like when directing Shakespeare, you have to approach him as a living playwright. You can't approach Shakespeare as if he died 400 years ago. You have to look at him and go, okay, this guy's alive right now. He just wrote this play, and this play has got to speak to my audience right now. Otherwise, I'm doing a museum piece, and that's been done, right? So what take do I have on it? What vision? How do I think this play speaks to me, and how do I want it to speak through me to my audience?
Do you think that some plays of Shakespeare, for instance, some require a little more like world building, I guess you call it, or more extensive kind of like preparation, either because they're lesser known or that some of the plays just have certain secret challenges to them?
Well, ironically, I think the histories, the ones that actually based on real history, need the most backstory because the modern audience is much less familiar with the story of Antony
I'm
and
scared to
Cleopatra.
death of them. I'm scared shitless of those things
Yeah.
because I would want to. You know what I'm always trying to do. I would love to be able to do. I don't want to do too much adaptation. I really want to do the original play if I can.
Yeah.
Because the magic of doing A Midsummer Night's Dream is that it requires no cut whatsoever. You can do it as is.
Oh yeah, it's
And you should.
short enough. It's beautiful enough. I would quibble. I would want a few cuts here and there.
Oh,
but
you can,
but not. But no, not much. Comedy of Errors is another one. It's already his shortest play.
Yeah.
So I mean, why cut it?
So you think the comedies? Do you think the comedies are a little bit more? I think they're less sloppy in a way. They're a little less sprawling than the histories and tragedies.
Most of them, I would say, As You Like It might.
Oh my God! Right. No, I don't even understand what is happening.
Yeah, I mean, As You Like It goes on.
I want to do that play
and on.
backwards. I want to put all the scenes in absolute reverse order.
That would be brilliant.
Yeah,
I would watch that.
And then it would end. It's these people who they go in complete reverse orders and then they return to court. Only to be thrown out again.
Yeah, so it's sort of like the As You Like It meets Pericles.
Yeah,
type of cycle play.
Right. They get thrown back out again, and they're like, "That's okay because I've been really having a great time out in the woods."
Yeah,
I want to do As You Like It backwards, but there are a lot of proposals that I've made, and this is fortunate that when it was me doing. I still put myself through a lot of development when it was my company. But if I'm pitching to another company, I sometimes don't know what they're going to want. When I'm pitching an idea, and I have to go into great detail. Though is what I always
you
feel
pitch
like
theatrical ideas.
Yeah,
theater.
Well, yeah, when you're being considered for a job, for a directing job.
Okay.
And then I do. It's pretty extensive prep when I can, and so I put these proposals together that are up to 20 pages of just written stuff, and then visual samples of inspirations and things like that, drawings and all that, because I want people to feel like, I can't watch if you're doing Much Ado About Nothing, and you've set it in I don't know, the future. Or and you can set it
space shuttle.
You can do it anywhere. That's the thing about that show. You can do it anywhere. Anything goes. You can put it on. I want to put it on a cruise ship or on an undersea laboratory or I want to see what you can't do with that show, because I'm pretty sure you can put it in an old folks home, in a high school. Of course you can't. You can do anything with it, but you have to deal with one line, which has to do with a sword, and where. Benedict says, well, I think I can't remember the exact lines, but his friends are like, "Hey, you want to talk about it?" He's like, "It's in my sword,"
Yeah.
And so you have to deal with that line, and that line is going to change everything. Were you going to cut it? You can. Are you going to pretend that the sword's off stage? Hey, it's in my sword. Shall I get it? That's how I played it once. Well, I was problem solved. Great. But
a lot of directors use sword, but they're like. Really, it's a gun, everybody, but I'm saying sword,
Or they have modern dress, but they're still carrying a sword. No, man. Not unless you created your own complete reality where that's part of the design.
Well, like I said, with Much Ado, that's easier to do than with a history. Because with a history, you're not going to get away with just not using a sword.
No,
yeah,
and
you
that's
have
why
to use the sword.
And I don't think there are as many radical interpretations of those histories. They might do Richard III.
Although, if I see another post-apocalyptic Richard III,
I just don't get it.
I'm gonna shoot myself.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Is that a promise? But no. But
really.
no, I know the feeling of the whole. If I see that again, I'm going to shoot myself.
Yeah. Do I have to sit through this?
Yeah.
Again?
I'm going to shoot myself.
Oh, look, it's Richard III, but it's the post-apocalypse, so we're going to climb an iron wrought fence because they have those here at this time, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's one that but that one you have to do something with it, and you could do it modern dress, absolutely. You could do it at any point in history that you wanted to, and I think that will work. You just have to be whatever choice you make. It's got to be consistent,
and it's got to be
original.
Original. It can't be like what we were just talking about this.
Uh-huh.
There's Shakespeare that's alive.
Yeah.
What Peter Brook called living theater,
Yeah.
right? Immediate theater.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Shakespeare that is deadly.
Mm-hmm.
The deadly theater, which is theater as it is supposed to be. And when I was producing Shakespeare, I would get, I worked for a company that sort of made their name updating Shakespeare and doing Shakespeare in modern dress. I remember my first show with them was As You Like It, Man. And so they set it in the 60s and everything like that when I was an actor there. And
I've never not seen As You Like It set in the 60s.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
I've seen it I've seen it done that way many times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done it twice now, both set in the 60s.
Fits perfect.
Yeah. But we would get all these
something good with that play, man. You got to do something with it.
Yeah, right.
Because it is going to be really hard. That play
it does have a 60s mentality to it. But we would get letters, Shakespeare's not supposed to take place in the 60s. Shakespeare is supposed to take place in the 1600s, late 1500s, his original time. And I'm like, well, actually, that's kind of a modern take on things. That's not how it was done for the first 300 years that it existed. For everyone, there was no costumer for 300 years. There was no such thing as a costumer. Actors would provide their own costumes, and it would go to, a lot of those roles would go to the person who could provide the most beautiful costume. And it was a modern, if a woman owned this fantastic, beautiful dress that cost the equivalent of like $500,000 in their time, then they would be playing the lead in every show because they owned the dress.
They fit the suit.
Yeah, they fit the suit. And so it wasn't until like late 1800s when realism started to take hold and people were like, well, we should do it the way it was done then, that people started going, oh, yes, Shakespeare's codpieces and pointy hats, and let's just do it, guys, everybody.
Well, and actually, I'm finding more and more, the last couple of things I've directed, Cymbeline and The Tempest, which were, to me, Cymbeline I knew I could update and bring into the 21st century. There's an interesting film that I saw with Ethan Hawke and Dakota Johnson of Cymbeline that was done, and it's very clever. And it totally, that's one it could feel like it's happening right now. It's wonderful. But I was also like, okay, nobody's ever seen Cymbeline before. Here's this play I love. Let me take it into in ancient times, and I've had some fun with and that's when Game of Thrones was just starting, and so we had it gave it and Game of Thrones owes a lot to Shakespeare. It's really wonderful. I think
absolutely.
George Martin is a huge Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, well, Shakespeare,
history,
yeah.
And so his you can see that it's there. I find that the update can be really, really fun. It can be really, really necessary, but it's not as though I just feel like we're always playing with time. I would love to do. I'd love to see. I adored Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet. That is just like such an example of like what an update can be, because it's fully shot through with, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it is ultra. They really figured out the details, and I really, really loved that about it. Down to the just they made it that adaptation really works for me, even if the style of acting isn't always like they're figuring out their style of acting as they went. I think that's a subject in itself is classical material on film.
Yeah. I actually think I know a few colleges that offer that.
Really?
Yeah.
That would be a pretty fascinating thing, because then you'd really be putting yourself to the test. But I bet it would work, and it works all the time.
You were talking about Hamlet, and I don't know. There seems to be a mandatory Hamlet every 7 years rule in the United States. Where it's like every 7 years we're going to do a new take on Hamlet. So there was like the Mel Gibson Hamlet, and then there was
Ethan Hawke.
So
yeah, they've done these, and they also are putting. Hamlet is the vehicle for a lot of great actors to.
It's the role.
It's the role, and I'm
that I will never play because I'm big.
Well, and are you too? And I don't know how old. I don't know how old Hamlet's supposed to be, but we're both past it.
Yeah.
And because he's supposed to be in grad school, is my opinion. And I think it's usually most exciting.
It could be played by someone as young as 16.
But
maybe as old as 35.
It's got a nice history of guys in their maybe up to about 50 who can still play it.
Yeah.
But it all is going to depend on your production. And so I saw Ralph Fiennes when he was like hot stuff, like in the this is in 1995, and he played Hamlet on Broadway, and I went, and it was I mean, he was awesome. Very strange though, because they were trying a new style. This is really weird. So Rafe, as I like to call him, Rafe went. Yeah, you know
when I'm calling him on the phone.
Yeah, he's apparently a really cool guy. But he did it in this way. The director wanted him to do it in this stream of consciousness way, and so I've seen a lot of people play Hamlet, but this actually was a whole reinterpretation. I don't think it always worked, but it was fascinating because he would say everything in this stream of consciousness. Our finest, our fight is an unweeded garden, grows to seed. Things rank and gross in nature possess it merely. That it should come to this, but two must dead. And like it's Ralph Fiennes going so fast that it didn't strip it of meaning, but you better like know the play really, really well. You couldn't just sit there and hear it. You had to really, really, and it was odd. He comes on for To Be or Not to Be, and he was.
It's got to be exhausting as an audience.
It was exhausting but it was where he was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that every Hamlet is coming on with their own way, and he was led into something. And I think that Ralph Fiennes has always been great. It's just that at the time, I think we saw the thing that truly scares him and scares every actor, which is Hamlet. And in looking for an approach, unfortunately, you can get in the way of the play.
Do you think the problem is that many actors approach a role like, well, I have to do it differently. So they're putting forth all this effort, and especially with a role like a high stakes role, so-called quote unquote, of Hamlet. I have to do it differently. Or else everyone's going to hate it. And I think that's a lot of pressure for an actor to put on themselves.
It's silly. That is, I don't know why. I think that's just a personal struggle. These people, are there people in the audience there to see you play Hamlet? Play Hamlet, okay? Yeah. Like, don't worry about how you're measuring up to somebody else who's done this, because
you're going to play it differently.
And Hamlet, the play has this agreement with the audience already. Yes, you're going to play it differently because you're you. The only thing that you can do wrong with Hamlet is to try and do it like you think it's supposed to be done. And that's death. I mean, it is just like the least interesting thing you can do.
To be or not to be, right? I have to put that pause in there, or else,
Well, and I'm deathly afraid of it. I'm so scared of. I think that I don't. You never fully own those words. It's like if you see, let's say that you see Bryan Cranston playing Walter White, who is definitely a Shakespearean level kind of mythical character in a way.
Sure, I mean? Oh, absolutely.
And by this point, you can't imagine anybody else playing that role. But because that one is specific. They're not going to bring that back, and nobody's ever going to play him again. But everybody is going to play Hamlet at some point, or is going to have some kind of Hamlet experience, and they're going to at some point have And my experience has been in private. I directed Hamlet and have always built it around the lead actor. That's how it has to work. I think is that it.
Well, the role's so big. I mean, I think there's at least 5 Shakespeare plays where you kind of have to work in that way.
But you better build out your whole entire ensemble that way too.
Well, you're using that as a seed and then letting it branch out.
Yeah, you're casting kind of. Yeah, you're never going to see a casting a post up saying now seeking Hamlet. You probably have that person picked out, but when it comes to interpretation, I do think that there are going to be some things. There are going to be some places where you get you're going to be fighting against something that is going to win, and in the end, you could do something that just takes all the meaning out of it. And so you don't want to exert your own creativity on something the way that you would with your own work. Like when it's yours.
There's a difference between
go hog wild.
There is a difference between having your own take on Shakespeare and reinterpreting it to your and this is with any play, I think, reinterpreting it and twisting the writing towards your own viewpoint and not have it being supported by the script.
What does
right?
Chekhov say about it? About Shakespeare? What is
Well,
there? Is
well,
there a
he,
Chekhov
well, yeah. I mean, he would get a lot of criticism. You know, he was known for his Shakespeare roles. There's someone saw him. There's this story of this woman who saw him when she was a child, right? And he had played Malvolio in The Merchant of Venice,
or in Twelfth Night?
Or in Twelfth Night,
Yeah,
excuse me. And she remembered that performance when she was 80 and would cry when she thought of it about Malvolio because it was for her it was and his interpretation was very very heartfelt, emotional, funny, everything. And I think it was Malvolio, but let's pretend it was Malvolio.
Let's say it is.
But he was known for his Malvolio. He had played Hamlet. He played a lot of roles, and he would get a lot of criticism because people would go, "Well, that's not the way it's supposed to be done."
Right.
And his quote is, you know, who's to say my Shakespeare is the same as your Shakespeare? And who cares?
We read it differently, and you know, if I've got the ball, if I'm the one holding the football, then it's not as though I'm trying deliberately to like fuck it up. You know, what I'm actually trying to do is continue to, you know, like I think what I want to do instead of being like I want to do it like nobody's ever done it before. That's a very egocentric way of doing it. It's like I have got to.
You've lost before you've even.
Yeah. You've just completely given up on on what you should be doing, which is this deep dive and finding, you know, and trusting it a lot more. And like you do need to come up with your design, but you need to leave a lot of space in there. You need to allow pockets in everything where you can where it can grow on its own, and you have to trust in your actors. I mean, you have to trust in them. And all I try to do with actors, and this is what I would ideally want to do, because we have to have every actor is going to require a different kind of conversation. But I really always I talk to them all, you know, and if they're I don't want anybody to feel like I'm ignoring them, but there will be times, and I do tell them ahead of time, like if I'm not talking to you, then just keep going like you are, okay? Like if I'm not talking to you, it's because I'm leaving you the space to grow right there. You know, like I'm leaving you the.
Yeah, it's okay not to get notes. It's not
absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, but as an actor, you might not know how to interpret that. So you do have to. I feel like it's really important to tell your actors what you really want. And if you can't tell them what you want, do you know what you really want? You know, and there are a lot of directors who I think are leaving a few things up to chance. Good. You should be wide open to the discoveries.
Well, it's an ensemble art.
Yeah. The beauty of our art is that, you know, you can't do it alone. I recommend that people find a way of developing their style and find a safe environment for themselves to do it in.
Yeah.
And that goes for everybody. I think that everybody, you and I, and you know, everybody we know ought to be getting together once in a while and you know, reading a play out loud. I know you do that.
Yeah, well, I tried to. I haven't done it in a while because a lot of people. Let's do it. All right, it's done.
And let's record it.
Yeah, that would be great.
You know, if we, yeah, I mean, we could, you know, like, or something, you know, even if it's just for our own selves. I would love to just be able to listen to that again in the car. I would just love to be able to revisit a performance that happens around somebody's table again. You know, I think that there would be tremendous. You know, one of the best experiments we ever did at the theater was we would start to do these staged readings, of which we did one. We did when we did Double Falsehood, and you go in very, very little rehearsal. You're taking on something that, because you know all the people that you have there, you've got them for a limited time, and you know you've only got that amount of time. You're taking and what we're basically going to give the audience is a look at the first run through, and a lot of people would be like, staged reading, what? You know, but no, we would actually be doing a fully staged reading where we're actually putting our lives on the line, you know?
And we did that with Double Falsehood, and I'll always be grateful for that experience. It's one of my cherished theatrical memories.
I loved it. I loved how we were able to, and you know, it's sort of like, you know, one of the things that I'm no longer too nervous about asking people, would you like to work with me on something? Because people are extraordinarily like, often flattered. They're just, thank you for thinking of me, of course, and that sounds really exciting. And, to do certain experiments, we did another one outdoors. The cops showed up. We got a noise complaint. And that we did the Shake Scramble. And I invited all, actors, just come on out. I'm not going to tell you ahead of time what the play is, but we're going to do this cut down version of it. You're going to learn on the spot, and you're going to be assigned a character that you pick out of a bag. And so we got to do The Merchant of Venice with Rick Sperling playing Shylock. And it was just like, oh, wow, this is a once in a lifetime. And it was a one night only, one and done deal. And there's something really, really exciting about something like that. And there is this incredible way that I think Shakespeare will always bring people together. And because there's this exploratory journey that we're all on with it, because to this day, nobody's really completely nailed it on the head. Nobody's ever done it perfect. I mean, you may there may be some legendary performances and things like, apparently John Barrymore's Hamlet is just the greatest thing that people talk about.
I saw it on film. It's okay. It's a little dated.
Yeah. Oh, there is a film of it. Yeah. Right. I've always wanted to see that.
Yeah.
But everybody's going to have their different, their favorites. But when you get down to it, what Hamlet's going to do, Hamlet's going to creep into you, and I think that you can't help yourself. And if you let it happen, you let it work on you. And this goes for this is how I try to approach any character. If you just let it work on you, and be the God, you're the one there expressing the experience to that audience and sharing your personal experience with it, with them, and it's a very bold and courageous thing to do. And theater acting is itself this tremendous act of courage. It's almost like a stunt. And there are times where I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be so stressful. And I almost have a little bit of PTSD from theater, from a few experiences that scare me about going back into it again. That's crazy, because it used to be my love and my obsession and everything in the world. But I'm actually it caused me a great deal of stress.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I'm terrified of theater now. And so, no, it caused me a great deal of stress. And I find that having worked in the film environment, and developing a way of working in there, which is it's just a bit more group focused.
Wow,
it is
such an interesting take.
Yeah, it is, man. Because everybody is so the film is so as soon as you
everyone's focusing on the moment.
Yeah,
and each moment individually, right? So the shot, right? But the shot is the the shot is the moment, and shot can last a second,
right?
But everybody is focused. Okay, we're going to get this 1 second right.
Yeah, and that's an extraordinary creative experience, because it's so focused on the shot, which is by itself just one piece out of all these. And I love it, but I'm also what I'm trying to do is what I'm drawn to is the experiences, the film experiences that where you can. I think there are going to be some great aspects of the theater process that can be embraced by film, but film cannot. Well, I'm not going to define it either, because it's still a relatively new art form. It's only 100-some years old.
Yeah.
So, and it's changing rapidly, and the technology is always dictating these aesthetic changes that happen too.
And access.
Yeah.
Access dictates the art as well. Because it's so accessible. It's more accessible now than people can watch a film from their pocket. Just go. I'm going to watch a film now, but people can. Right?
You can.
Yeah.
And I suppose if it's a good movie, it won't matter what.
And my kids certainly can.
Yeah.
And my kids do. They're like, I'm going to watch this YouTube experience on my, right now.
That's what it is. Actually, it is an experience, and it's a little less caught up in things like story. And things
right now, sure.
And film is actually more. It works more on our senses than it does on our intellect. And that's a thing that the theater can too, but the film, the beauty of film, and that was discovered early on, is that it's incredible for showing the interiority of a character through visual means. So it could be a point of view, it can be an edit, it can be It can be all those things, but the way that those things interact together. And I do think that if you go back to and there's also a beautiful thing that happens with Shakespeare as well, because you're taking something that's so completely anachronistic and out of our time, just so out of time. I mean, I know that Shakespeare's kind of ubiquitous and he's in everything, and his influence is felt in so many places. I'm not like
everywhere.
Yeah, it's not just me, but I do.
People think half of Shakespearean quotes are from the Bible, and you're like, no, that's from Shakespeare.
Yeah, no, it's People get them mixed up all the time, and so it's not that. But I do think that a lot of people do stay away from it. And there are actors that I know who are good ones who, for whatever reason, have even looked down on it and said, well, that's that kind of thing. It's never done it for me. And I know what they're talking about. I do think that it's when actors are putting there's just this gulf, this distance between an audience and an actor already. So don't widen that gulf
through language,
through putting it all on the voice, or putting it all on oneself. Self-indulgent acting, I think, is Shakespeare's great for it, and it's really it's one of the things that is one of the biggest traps of it is that many of these roles can become extraordinarily self-indulgent.
I hate to leave it there.
Okay, but instead we let's say that I'm happy to know that with all these things with this art form, it is the target is always moving, and as soon as you think that you've done everything right, you've created something you can do everything right, check all the boxes, and in your creation, and it can be tight. And it can be, technically sound. But if it's missing the elusive magic, or if you didn't build in a little bit of elasticity, and if you didn't build in possibilities, and I think the way to do it is you just create a creative environment for your performers, and with your, with everybody that you're working with. And what I would say to people is, don't do this stuff all alone. Like don't broaden it out too wide either. When you know what you want, if you're a because I would design sets too. I was a designer as well to an extent. I'm not a great one, but like I definitely know how to like communicate with designers now. And that's a hard thing to establish. But when you find people that you really, really love and that you really, really want to, you feel like you could learn from them. You feel like you could you'll be better as a result of working with them, and they'll because they're already so phenomenal, and you come in, and I think if you come in humble, and if you come in with your eyes open, and you're really, really picking up the signals from the other person, and it's almost like this, when you go up to a TV and an old TV with the static and the lid and the things on it, and you'd almost feel this glow, and there's this energy that you can feel, and you can feel it between yourself and another actor, hopefully. And if you can't, do something, like stimulate it, surprise the other person. Seriously, even if you're a day player and you're playing next to the star, surprise them with something. They will appreciate it. Cut them off.
Well, live in the moment.
Yeah.
You can surprise anybody, including yourself, if you just react to something authentically.
Right. But there's so many traps that draw you inside of your skull instead of which can function okay on film. You can watch that, but it's not a comfortable place to stay. And so I always feel like the collaboration that happens is what makes it so unique and magical. And art is so sacred to me. Great art is the greatest accomplishment of our species, and we're the only species that I know of that really actively makes it, except for that elephant who can paint. But it's because it's this gold. We as actors, we don't have a paintbrush. We are the thing, and we're the gold. Yeah. And the power of never think that you're not the important part of the process, because there's nothing without you. There's absolutely nothing without
no matter where you're at.
Yeah, and so
if you're carrying the spear, you're still really important to the process.
Well, you're vital. You are vital, and you're everything. We can't do it without you. And if you're not on board, and if I myself don't care about you enough to give you a direction, then you're not
direction.
Yeah, if I've given you something that you can play, or something that you can work on or struggle with, that's the greatest thing, and that's what's going to keep it alive.
Yeah.
Man, for those of you listening and watching at home, understand that we are at hour 2 of talking because we, for some reason, stopped recording in the middle of our conversation, which explains the big jump cut at around minute 20 of this video. But I want to say this: it couldn't have happened with a better person.
Oh, I'm happy to, and
Yeah.
it's like.
Yeah.
It's like if we saw each other all the time, we wouldn't have like.
I doubt that.
About.
No, I disagree.
No. We'd probably be. There's so much to it, and
Yeah.
which is why,
Yeah.
isn't it fabulous to discuss something specific? Discuss the specifics of an art form with artists,
Yeah.
and especially because you seem like a genuinely curious person too,
Mhm.
and I am too, and since I do interviews and things like that, I there's nothing like. And what I like about this format too is that we've both been able to, share the love for what we do here. And I do agree. I think that we could continue wrestling with this because again, it's not set. It's not finished.
Well, hopefully we're always learning.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're always, because it's our passion, we'll always have something to talk about.
It's just one big play, man.
Yeah.
It really is.
Who said that? Like life, all the world's what's the line? All the world's a stage. Some dude said that.
Yeah.
I can't think of
Griffin.
that. Yeah,
I think it was Merv Griffin. Who
Yeah.
said,
Okay.
All the world's a
Okay.
stage.
If you like this video, subscribe, please, or actually hit like. That would be awesome. If you have any questions for Bart and I, Bart, what do you have going on?
Yeah, I've started a company. I've started Catalytic Art and Media, and we've just now got a site up where we've got catalyticmedia.org, and catalytic meaning the sort of a transfer of it's about transformation, and going back to Robert Bresson and the notes on the cinematograph, no art without transformation is this beautiful thing he said, and that's on our website. I just couldn't get enough of it, and what that means is that we're actually translating a kind of like human experience, and one of the ways that we're doing that is we had our 3-part documentary on the Line 5 pipeline. So Line 5 film.com is where you could go to see all that, and we did that, and like it became clear that like we're not done after a year. I thought we were done, but we actually have
they had another spill.
Well, there have been oil spills, but it's just an ongoing battle, and we're finally getting down to where the crux of the issue, the paradoxical aspect of all this, really lies, and why. What I want to keep doing is continue to look at the human impact of environmental danger, and but what so I wasn't looking to get back into it, but it just wouldn't let us go. So we're going back in to do one more episode.
Well, obviously, there are amazing artists right here in Michigan that you can learn from and that you should find. So thank you, Bart.
Oh, my pleasure.
I hope you will come back because I could talk to you for like 12 hours.
Anytime. Yeah.
And again, subscribe. If you have any questions for Bart and I, feel free to pop it in the comments. We will get back to you. And thanks, guys. I'll see you guys later.